Hello everyone, it is me again. I'm just popping in with a little background video for you to show you some of the things that go into the editing process and maybe teach you something if you use the same tools as me or you want to get into video editing. And also just to give you sort of appreciation of what goes behind some of the silliest and stupidest jokes. So what I've got here is a single clip from the upcoming, or possibly already released, you never know what time you're watching this, Yakuza video. So this is Yakuza episode 2, and you can see it's not very long at all. So these are individual frames I'm stepping through. It's about, I would say about 2 seconds long. I'm just gonna hit play and you can see what happens. And then I'm gonna explain what all of this is that you can see down at the bottom. So there's no sound, but you just get normal combat sounds over it. So the joke here, the entire joke, is this. It is this sign on the right there that says Kick into Cock Museum. All of this effort here goes into positioning that banner such that it looks like it's part of the world. There's a lot of work to it. We're going to start basically left to right. Mostly we will hop to the bottom at one point, but we'll start from the left. So this is a background node. This is a transparent background. I use these all the time as little hacks to force something to a certain resolution. The background automatically sets itself to the resolution of your clip. So in this case, it's 1920 by 1080 standard resolution, because what we're putting into it using this little merge here, if I zoom in a little, we can see a bit better. This merge here, what we're putting into it is the Kick into Cock Museum sign, which is just an image I've grabbed from the internet. That is a real museum. And that's what the image looks like by sort of default. There's actually a little bit more to it. That's why there's this polygon here. If I disconnect the polygon, so blue lines here mean that they're masks, so they are making things transparent. If I disconnect it, you can see the original image. There we go. There's the Kick into Cock Museum. So what I've done is I've drawn this little polygon mask like that around it. Simple as. Plug it in, and we get it cut out. Now, if you zoom in, you can see that there's little bits where we've missed it. Honestly, that does not matter when you're video editing and things are moving and things are quick. The most important thing is not that your art is correct, it's that it looks correct, okay? So never spend too much time doing these. We've added a little bit of feathering. I say we, I have. I've added a little bit of feathering, just a tiny amount here. And what that's done is just a little bit of transparency at the edge there. Otherwise, you get quite a hard edge, which honestly, we're probably not noticing in the final version at all. But I add in just a little bit, just to soften it and blend it in a little bit. So that's our sign extracted. Because it was quite small over here, we've made it bigger. And this is just to account for the fact that the resolution of the original image is quite low. So we've zoomed it in using a transform node, which is nice and easy. Zoom it in. We then gotta put it through color correction. I don't know why I keep saying we like I'm a scientist. I've done all this. It's my work. So this is a simple color correction node. I noticed that the game in this scene, a lot of this game actually is very green color coded, but this one has a bit more yellow, has a bit more orange going on. So I've pushed it slightly more orange than green. It is still a little bit green. So you can see before, and if I put up on the right, you'll see afterwards. You can just see we've darkened it. I've darkened it. I've got to get out of this habit. I've darkened it. I've made it a little bit more orange. And this is sort of just a taste thing, just to sort of see what looks right. The best way to do this, by the way, with the color correction is to not touch it at all until you're at the end. Select the media out like this, and then select your color correction, and then start changing it. So you can see we could tweak it a bit, maybe make it a bit more orange. That works as well. I kind of stuck it to there because I thought that looked a bit more natural. But you could go more red. You could go whatever you want, really, with it. And you just want to get something natural. Because if it's unnatural, people notice it. If it's natural enough, people won't. And that's the important thing. So we've got our color corrected sign. We're going to put that into a grid warp. What the grid warp does, it sort of starts it off pointing in the right direction. Because the issue that we're going to have to deal with is this sign in the original is not straight on at the camera. You can see that because this bit's larger and higher than this bit. So we've got to slightly correct for that with the grid warp. Now I've overcorrected it just because I found it easier to match it this way, to be quite honest. We'll get back to the grid warp in a second. we're actually going to swap over to the other track here. So this is our original clip. So as you can see, there's no sign on the wall. And there's Kiryu getting just absolutely punched in the dick. How we've actually managed to move it around in the scene is a little bit of magic called a planar tracker. There are a couple of different kinds of trackers you can get in video editors, and it depends on what you're trying to look for. A planar tracker tracks planes. A plane is a flat 2D shape like a wall or a TV monitor or something like that. Something that's flat, and it kind of has some assumptions in there that enable it to track that better. Because we're tracking a wall, the planar tracker is the best choice. You can do this with other trackers. You can do this with a normal tracker using tracked points and use the corners, but it will look worse. So what I did was I placed down where I wanted to track, and I grabbed as much of it as I could. You've got to be careful to not get bits that are going to be covered by Cursedness all the time, but we've managed it fairly well, because that can throw off the tracker. It looks jittery, but it actually does stay on pretty well. That's actually just the overlay is jittery. And to do that, you just set it up to track. I mean, that's all default. And then you draw a square on here. You basically set four points and you go, hey, track this. And then it'll go through it and do a brand new one. So actually, tell you what, let's do a new tracker, because I don't want to undo the tracking I've got, because I'm currently recording this having not recorded the final version. Let's get a tracker up. Okay. And what we're going to do is we're going to recreate this. So I want to track, I'm gonna scan through the footage, see where the camera moves. Okay. So over here, we're gonna be a little bit careful because things sort of start disappearing. So I don't want to go too far off that right corner. In general, the more stuff you've got in the track that's in that plane, the better that track is going to be. Now, I'm going to zoom in a little bit because what we need this to be is roughly the right height. So it's just sort of just a little underneath that bell. I think that's about there. I'll move that to there and then finish it off. And just going to make sure we zoom in properly. In our bottom right corner, lines up with the absolute edge of that, and our top right corner lines up with the absolute edge of that. And we've got to be real careful about these edges, because these edges are what get the perspective right for us. You mess that up, and trust me, it is going to be noticeable. And you usually have to fix it a little bit, which is why we've got that little grid warp in there as well. That fixes that too. So there's our panel, and we're going to now track that. So we set the reference time to just about now, and then we hit track forward. I like to use hybrid point/area, so it'll use sort of more information in the scene. We do want perspective, and that everything else is fine. So we track forward, and you see it's getting, these are the movement that it's seen that the camera's done, and the camera has moved here. Look, because there's a little jitter as Kuze's foot comes in. There's a little screen shake, and it's tracked that. You can see the screen shake there as well. So we do that, and then we go back. You see that's caught it well, but it's absolutely messed up here because Kuze jumps in front. So that's why you got to be careful. When you get stuff like that, the best thing to do is to move it back. Something like this. And then get the line up right. Obviously, we haven't got any helpful lines here, so this is a little bit more worrisome. We are going to have to fix this up a little bit afterwards. But you move it back. I think this needs to be a little bit to the right. Sort of mirroring parallel to this line here. And then you hit set again. That's going to undo the track. You track forward. It's great. Track back. And that's kept it fine. That's good. So now we have a panel. And from there you can create a planar transform, which you can see we've got up here. Here's one I made earlier. So I'm just going to delete that because we've got it now. And our planar transform is just like a transform node. It moves things around, but it puts it onto the plane. So here's our grid warp, and here's our planar transform. It's not doing a ton, but you'll notice now the left one doesn't move. The right one with the planar transform is jittering along with the camera now. You see? So as the camera moves, it's now following that. We've got a few transforms to just move things around in the scene. But I wanted to show you why we have the grid warp. So if I take the grid warp off and plug it straight in, you can see that it's actually like, it's just straight on, right? It's just straight on. And that's because the planar transform isn't sort of pushing it into the scene. You kind of want corner pinning for that. I personally don't like corner pinning unless you have set it up. If you're recording something and you've got something you want to corner pin, you will use a like bright green square or something that with reference marks in it in order to match that up in the scene. I don't have that. Whenever I'm editing game footage, I'm doing the best with what I've got. You know, it's often grainy, it's often got motion blur and stuff like that there's nothing I can do about it. The best post-processing is pre-processing, which is something I'm sure they say in the industry. But if not, we'll claim I made that up. So the grid warp kind of just fixes all of that. So you can see it now just puts it directly on the wall when we're in there. Planar transform that's now shaking about, but we now need to put it in the scene. And so that just shifts it to the right, because before it was sort of over here, and that would be behind Kuze. Initially, when I was doing this, I was like, oh yeah, I'll try and like mask out Kuze. That's not going to happen. The reason that's not going to happen is, look at these punches. There's a load of partially transparent fire effects coming off of him. It might be possible to mask that out by hand painting over it, but that would be, you're talking like a month of work. So just move the thing to the right. I tried it. I thought maybe I could do it, but no. It is months of work, and it's not worth it for the bit. As much as I overcomplicate things for the bit, it is not worth it for the bit. We've then got a little background here that has a gradient on it. So whenever you see a background, it's not necessarily a background. What it is just an image with either a solid color or a gradient or a pattern on it. And I've created this little shadow. So if we have a look here at the Kick in the Cock Museum, and then we have a look at the merge, which is combining the Kick in the Cock Museum with that shadow, you can see there's a little shading here going over it, darkening the left-hand side. And that's to match the shading that's happening here. You might ask why I didn't put it in the middle. And there's a good reason for that. I wanted the lettering to look a little bit like it's got a shine. And the shine will always pick up slightly more towards the edge of the light source that we've got to the right here. And as you can see, as you move, it just vaguely picks up. Look at that. The shadow sort of doesn't move with the rest of the thing. Which we could have had do. We could have plugged a copy of the planar transform into here and had the shadow move. But because I wanted it to look shiny, you now get this shininess because the shadow sort of moves over it like that. But yeah, I mean, we could fix that by duplicating the planar transform, putting it on the background so the background also moves with the camera. And that would give you a more matte effect. But yeah, that just gives us a little shadow which places it in the world a little bit better. And we have a further shadow here, which is a drop shadow. So you can see the difference here. Zoom in a little. Just a little drop shadow here, and that just places it on the world. It gives it an effect on the world. If I take the drop shadow off, it's not a huge difference, but it is noticeable now. Like it doesn't look like it's part of the world. See? It just feels more natural. And then the last bit is the merge. Honestly, you can disconnect the planar tracker here. The planar tracker doesn't have a persistent effect. It's used to generate that planar transform that we've got earlier on up here. I just left it on because I'm lazy. You can tell I'm lazy because I haven't named any of these except for this. Like any of these nodes. No, like I'm sure professionals name their nodes. I don't. We blend that on so that we're just finally putting it on the same scene as our actual game footage. And then stick it in the media out. The media out is just put this in the render. So there you go. That's how I spent 90 minutes on one very stupid joke. I hope you've enjoyed this little behind the scenes video. If you do enjoy it, let me know and I might do more of these. But yeah, just felt like explaining something. I hope you've learned something. All right, that's all from me. I'll see you very, very soon, and I hope you enjoy the final video when it comes out. Or if you're watching this later in the future, I hope you've already enjoyed it.